Ladies and gentlemen, as outlined in the conclusion of the previous learning unit, we will now dive right into learning unit 3, where we'll be looking at the assessment and selection of suppliers and sustainable purchasing. Discussions in this learning unit will revolve around criteria used for supplier selection, the supplier selection process, and the types of buyer-supplier relationships. Sustainable purchasing involves the concept of ethical purchasing, green purchasing, and risk management in purchasing. This learning unit is made up of 2 chapters, which are Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. Therefore, the first part will investigate the assessment and the selection of suppliers, and the second part will dive into the sustainability element of purchasing management. The selection of suppliers and sustainable purchasing and supply management are central to the success of an organization's supply chain management strategy. Choosing the correct suppliers will ensure that the firm is able to deliver their products and services on time. Suppliers be reliable to ensure continuity in production and to ensure that there's no disruptions in the supply chain. These are the objectives we seek to understand by the end of Chapter 5. To firstly discuss the criteria used for the selection of suppliers, secondly, to discuss the supplier selection process, and lastly, discuss the 3 types of buyer-supplier relationships. One of the most important activities in the purchasing and supply process is the selection of and evaluation of suppliers. The purchasing team is given the task to manage the organization's supplier base, which is the upstream part of its supply chain. The objectives of the purchasing team are to ensure that they source and procure the right goods and services of the right quality from the right supplier at the right price, in the right quantity, delivered at the right place, at the right time, and using the right supply chain. Of these objectives, the key objective is choosing the correct supplier, and then all the remaining objectives shall be satisfied. The supplier assessment criteria are used to gauge and select suppliers. Some of these indicators include time, quality, delivery, price, and cost structure. These are used as performance indicators that are used when assessing suppliers. The supplier selection process. The supplier selection process is made up of 3 stages. We have the exploratory stage, also known as the pre-assessment phase, the selection stage, also known as the assessment phase, and the last phase being the supplier management or the post-assessment phase. And there are steps within each of these phases. The first phase is called the exploratory stage or the pre-assessment phase. This is regarded as the investigation phase that involves the identification of suppliers and the pre-screening to reject unsuitable ones with the purpose of creating a pool of potential suppliers. So step 1 of the exploratory phase is the identification of potential suppliers, where we use source of information for initial selection and assessment. Some of the important sources that we use to find or identify suppliers may include internet search engines, the chambers of commerce or business embassies, trade directories, trade journals and business journals, industry trade fairs. Step 2 of the exploratory phase is pre-screening to reject unsuitable suppliers. It is important to perform an initial screening operation to eliminate any suppliers that may be unsuitable. The second phase is the selection stage or the assessment phase. The first 2 steps identify possible suppliers, and then unsuitable suppliers were eliminated to provide a short list of potentially suitable ones. The choice of the suppliers should be in line with the organization's purchasing and supply policy guidelines. Step number 3, conduct research on potential suitable suppliers. Information sources for supplier research include supplier visits and supplier surveys or questionnaires. Step number 4, choose the assessment method and analyze the supplier. Some of the methods that we can use are informal techniques and formal techniques. Step number 5, select the supplier or suppliers. This is where we choose the best suited supplier. The third phase is the supplier management or post-assessment phase, where we have step 6, dealing with the ongoing measurement of the supplier performance. Supplier performance measurement is very important as it helps identify poor performing suppliers that we can improve or change them in most cases. Step 7 looks at supplier accreditation, where we have 3 types of accreditation. The first one being approved suppliers, preferred suppliers, and certified suppliers. Supplier relationship management. What constitutes a buyer-supplier relationship? A buyer-supplier relationship is a connection or association between 2 or more parties. And there are three types of buyer-supplier relationships, which are transactional, collaborative, and alliance relationships. The first buyer-supplier relationship is called transactional relationships. It refers to the straightforward relationship between a buyer and a seller, wherein two parties do not get closely involved with each other, but exchange goods or services for payments. For example, when you decide to buy chips at a local spaza, you don't get there and start negotiating prices, but you merely take what you need and pay for it at the till. The second type of buyer-supplier relationship is called collaborative relationships. This is where buyers and sellers recognize a need to cooperate to achieve cost effectiveness, quality, and on time delivery. Therefore, organizations aim to build collaborative relationships with suppliers. For example, in the South African automotive industry, original equipment manufacturers tend to adopt a long term view on supplier relationships and consider these relationships as collaborative. Finally, we have an alliance relationship. The main distinction between collaborative and alliance relationship is the existence of institutional trust, which is carefully designed, planned, and mutually agreed upon. This chapter focused on the selection and the evaluation of the right suppliers and the importance of supplier relationships. I hope you have a better understanding of how important relationships with suppliers are. Now we're moving on to a very new topic in purchasing and supply chain, which is the understanding of purchasing and sustainability. Please stay tuned. We will now be looking at the last chapter of Learning Unit 3, which is Chapter 6, Sustainable Purchasing and Supplier Management. Sustainability is important in an organization to ensure that the firm is making profit whilst trying as best as possible to reduce environmental degradation. Sustainable purchasing also includes the concept of corporate social responsibility and good corporate governance. In this chapter, we will look at the following objectives. We will have to briefly discuss the corporate social responsibilities of the purchasing and supply management, discuss the concept of business ethics, purchasing and supply ethics, and ethical conduct. Discuss the areas of unethical conduct in purchasing and supply management. Discuss greening opportunities throughout supply chain. Explain the concept of risk and uncertainty in purchasing and supply chain management. Classify risks inherent in purchasing and supply management. Explain the risks found in purchasing and supply management. Discuss the contingency plans to deal with purchasing and supply chain risks. Let's get into it. Corporate governance and purchasing and supply chain management. The first concept is corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility is when the organization's consideration and the response to issues beyond the narrow economic, technical, and legal requirements of the organization. As part of the organization, purchasing and supply management has a financial responsibility to shareholders and an ethical responsibility. Meeting the discretionary responsibilities expected by the society. The definition encompasses the activities relating to community, diversity, environment, ethics, financial responsibility, human rights, and safety. Ethical aspects in purchasing and supply management. The first concept is business ethics. It's the use of recognized social principles involved in justice and the fairness throughout business relationships. Business ethics and ethical conduct starts and stops with top management, which must ensure and take responsibility and should also be held accountable for unethical conduct in organizations' operations. Purchasing and supply ethics and ethical conduct. Based on the values of the business and accepted principles within the purchasing profession, these are some of the importance of ethical conduct in purchasing. Purchasers have the power over large sums of money. Purchasers probably have the greatest say in terms of which supplier will receive an order. Purchasers could be exposed to unethical temptations. Unethical actions by purchasers influence relationships with suppliers. Temptations influence a purchaser's objectivity and rational thinking. These are some of the areas of unethical conduct amongst purchasers. These are some of the areas of unethical conduct that purchasers may engage in. Having an interest in a supplier and putting own interests before employers. Not reporting unethical conduct by superiors or colleagues. Ordering oneself, friends, and colleagues in the organization's name to obtain products at a low price. Withholding important information from a supplier. Making confidential information known to suppliers, setting specifications to suit one specific supplier, thereby cutting out competition, disclosing confidential information about the purchaser's own organization that may damage it. Green purchasing and supply chain management. Environmental or green purchasing is the integration of environmental consideration into purchasing policies, programs, and actions. The main objective is to facilitate recycling, reuse, and resource reduction. The purchasing team can contribute to environmental performance in the following ways: buying reusable, recyclable packaging material, participating in design stage and suggest alternative sources, asking upstream members of the supply chain to commit to waste reduction goals, use early supplier design involvement, select suppliers based on environmental criteria, evaluate suppliers' environmental performance. Risk and risk management in purchasing and supply. Risk and uncertainty. Risk is defined as the deviation or the variability of actual results from the desired or expected results. One of the integral parts of risk is uncertainty. Uncertainty consists of two elements: uncertainty about whether an event will take place, if the event does occur, what the outcome will be. The classification of risks inherent in purchasing and supply management. Risk in a corporate environment and in purchasing and supply as part of the organization can be divided into two categories. The first category being speculative risks and the second one being event risks, which are further subdivided into four other categories. The first being core business risks, incidental business risks, operational risks, external downside risks. Let's look into the speculative purchasing and supply management risks. These are risks that offer chance of gain and a loss. Within speculative risks, we have two other risks, which are core business risks in the purchasing and supply management and incidental business risk in the purchasing and supply. On the other hand, we have event risks impacting on the purchasing and supply management. Are those risks that offer only a chance of loss with no chance of a gain. Within event risks, we also have two other risks, which are external downside risks and operational risks impacting purchasing and supply management. In today's dynamic environment, ethical behavior is essential and should be the general culture in purchasing and supply and throughout the organization. For our next learning unit, we will be looking at the management of quality and inventory in purchasing and supply. Please do not forget to do the activity at the end of the learning unit. Thank you.